you may have seen the display there with the really cute Barbies and wheelchairs. After having worked with this team, Wheelchair Odyssey, since their ICOR days, I will not look at a built space on campus, at the airport, or at the supermarket the same way again. And Karen's going to talk to you about that.
Okay. Hi, and thank you for coming. My name is Karen Barrett, and I teach at the University of Maine at Farmington in the Rehab Services Program, and my compadre, Chad Duncan, is Chair and Program Director of Orthotics and Prosthetics at Talis University in Pennsylvania. And our project is called Wheelchair Odyssey. It is an educational program for people to learn about access and how people navigate spaces with wheelchairs. What's the backstory? Wheelchair users face a lot of barriers, and those barriers keep them from full participation, and we actually say discriminate against folks who use wheelchairs. And just as an aside, disability is a minority group that any one of us can become at any time. Okay, so just so you see here a young woman coming back to her van, and somebody is parked in the loading zone, which is a problem for her, obviously. And I really don't think people are malicious, right? I don't. I think people just don't think, and they don't understand what the needs are. And so I know that when people know better, they do better, right? So what's our goal? We want to teach, our first goal is to teach future practitioners about how wheelchair users use space and how the built environment can inhibit full participation, including ADA requirements, Americans with Disabilities Act requirements. So that's our goal, is to educate. In the past, we had students do a 3-day simulation. I spoke to some of you about this, and so they would do all their daily activities using a wheelchair, and it had all kinds of risks. The biggest one for me was when a student would say, I never want to have a disability, it was awful, right? What we want is for students to understand that it's not the disability that is limiting, it's the built environment that makes the disability a disability. The other risk is some of our students would ride down the amphitheater, stairs in their wheelchair and bring it back in 3 pieces. And we're like, yeah, that's a liability problem. So, but students did learn a lot from that experience, and it changed the way they thought about space. And so the activity itself was really quite valuable, but it had its limitations. So we said, what if we virtualize this experience of using a chair and encountering inaccessible things? So what are some of the things that we're building into the Wheelchair Odyssey program? It's interactive. So one of the things about online learning sometimes is that it's a very passive thing. And we know the more that we can engage the user and point and click and have them go on quests and go on a job interview as if they used a chair, that's going to increase the stickiness of that training and hopefully develop some empathy for what it's like to use a chair. We're going to have assessments, both pre-tests and post-tests. We will have real-life scenarios. We're going to make someone go through the steps of a job interview virtually and encounter inaccessible things, and maybe end up late for their job interview because they encountered inaccessible situations. There will be informational pop-ups throughout, video clips and testimonials from real-life people who've encountered these barriers. I met a young woman in middle school who is on fire about this, and she can't wait to be part of the testimonials. It's also, our first customer segment is rehab educators, but it's certainly customizable beyond that initial prototype to things like continuing education, airlines, customer satisfaction. We talked about required employee training, onboarding, right? what we found is that there's a lot of ADA training online, but it's mostly passive and not interactive. It's not systematically assessed. And we were talking about the animations that exist. The National ADA Center actually has animations about why somebody needs so much space in the bathroom, for example, and it shows someone moving through the space. So really nice animations that are informative, but they're kind of boring. And one of the guys behind the ticket counter looks like a serial killer. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't know who made that avatar, but I could change that. So approaches in higher ed among our faculty and rehab educators are really inconsistent. One faculty member will do this, another will do that, and we think that really results in inconsistent learning outcomes. Here's our little picture, right, of our commercialization, and our team's always been really strong, and we're working, right? These folks are intense in a good way, right? We have a ways to go yet, and these charts do not at all capture the learning that has taken place, right? You know the little emoji that has the brain explosion? It's like, that's what Chad and I text back and forth to each other after our MIRTA meetings. So the plan is to pilot the prototype in the fall semester with my intro class, and then tweak it, see how students like it. And we're looking at a subscription kind of licensing thing. As you would buy a textbook, you would buy access to this educational program. Future customer segments include occupational therapy, architecture. We've actually talked to some architectural educators, and CEUs for allied health. So people already in the profession may also access this through a subscription or some pay access. So here's a truck parked on the sidewalk. And Marshall Dodge, some of you know who Marshall Dodge is, right? Come to think of it, you can't get there from here, right? So I think it's really important that the ADA has been in place for 30 years and people are still discriminated against. And so we can do better. Questions?
Before we go into questions, I just want to make a note. This is our first MIRTA team from UMaine Farmington, and also shout out to the advisor for this team, Sharon Tullius.
Yay!
Questions? Thoughts? Yes?
What was your biggest mind blow?
Just the amount of factors and variables that are involved in commercialization, right? There's all the legal stuff, but there was so much to it, and it's really hard to explain right at the moment, but it just much more complex than I ever expected it to be.
That's good. I am.